Okay, I'm going to call the February 10th meeting of the Board of Public Works to order. We currently have present Tom Owen, Richard Nichols, Presley is on by Zoom. We're trying to get Earl Webb to connect. We're having a little technical difficulties on his side, but we're going to get started so we don't go on much further. So
because it says
we also have present Hans Bedler from the county and our general manager and assistant general manager and Sharon are present. He was in here, and we have and our solicitors here. Just off the big right up here. So the purpose of this meeting is for the board to discuss the last public meeting that we had, where we had public input and the results of the GHD report. So the intent here is for the board to figure out the next steps forward. But in starting, what I wanted to do was to kind of summarize the comments we've gotten to date. And as typical, we got a very, very good response rate from the public. And they were well thought out and providing a lot of good ideas. I'm going to attempt to summarize them in the meeting here, but we will be posting on our website in the future a set of frequently asked questions derived from both the public comments and from other areas, so that there's more information out there for the public to understand. And we will be having a follow-on public workshop where we will explain our next steps going forward. So we received approximately 50 comments, suggestions, and in high level, the majority of the comments were in favor of option 3. Next was option 1, and then lastly option 2. Now, I can't give you exact percentages because some of them people had rankings of option 3, option 1. So it makes it a little difficult to give definitive, but the vast majority were in favor of option 3. So on a high level, and I apologize, I'm getting over a head cold, so this is my takeaway from having read the comments that were submitted. And just for everyone's knowledge, Sharon has put together a spreadsheet. It is, I mean, everyone provided a lot of comments, and it's I've tried to digest them. So going through them, the Sussex, there's a lot of questions about Sussex Rehoboth Beach and what happened in the past. And frankly, what we're looking at here is what's best for the Lewes Public Works ratepayers. So it's what happened in the past happened in the past, and it also is an apples to apples comparison. At that point, and Hans, you correct me if I'm wrong, that was strictly to buy outfall capacity. It was not treatment. So what we're looking at here is a very, very different arrangement than what happened in Rehoboth Beach. And we're not necessarily going to address what happened at Rehoboth Beach. There were quite a few comments about the smell of the existing plant. And I think I just want to put to bed that we have had some historic issues with smell from the plant, but I think we've got most of that under control. The real smell is the fact that the plant is located in the middle of a marsh. And specifically at low tide, the marsh off gases. So whether the plant was there or not, I don't know that there's going to be any appreciable change in the smell. Once again, I'm summarizing from my perspective. This is not. There's a lot of people who wanted us to wait, especially for considered doing option 2, saying that we could, stay where we are. But everyone sees the development that's going on around us and the cost of land increasing. So waiting 10 or 20 years to make a decision is going to greatly limit the options we have for procuring land or procuring land that is close and accessible. Option, a lot of people commented about doing option 1 or doing nothing and waiting. And I think, as I've stated in the past, I personally don't believe that is a viable option of doing nothing, because the storms are going to choose their own timing, and our facilities are at risk, and even the state puts us in the high risk category. And hardening the plant, well, we'll hear from the board here shortly, is only going to put off the inevitable, and we would have to then go, and whether the county was still willing to do anything 10 years down the line with us, or procuring land, as I just stated, would be more expensive. If we do consider option 1 going forward, I think it's imperative that we provide a rendering to the public of what the berm sheet piling structure would look like, so that they could understand the view shed from Savannah, American Legion, and the canal Gills Neck Road. There were a lot of people who had comments about the reuse of the site if option 2 or 3 was chosen. And all good ideas, but frankly, that's not the decision process that we're in right now. That would be the bridge we would cross down the line once we determined that we were going to demolish the existing plant. So, whether it was solar, wind farms, open space, whatever, are all things that we would take on down the line. Some people commented about the historic beach closures due to E. coli. And I'm not sure if everyone realizes, but there were genetic tests done at that time, and the cause of the contamination was from agricultural runoff or wildlife. It was not pollution or discharges from our plant or other plants. So it's a real issue that we have to deal with, but it's actually outside of the scope of this discussion, and is something that would be covered by the NRPDS permits and the EPA. A lot of people expressed concerns over option 3 about going into an agreement with the county. I think, as I said before, both the county and BPW are responsible for developing and treating waste and providing other services, in our case, through developments that are approved by either county council or city council. So we don't have the option of saying we're not going to treat any more flow. If the city approves a plan, and I think I can speak for Hans, you don't have the option of saying you're not going to treat wastewater if the county approves. So those are all real concerns, but I would just encourage that everyone needs to take those up with county council and city council, county planning and city planning in the development process. There were questions about capital projects down the line if we went with option 3 and the county needed to upgrade the facility down the line and how those costs would be shared. And that is something that we would need to put into our agreement with the county on how those costs would be allocated and shared down the line. It's a very valid question. We just don't have the answer to that right now.
Mr. Chairman. The current agreement already addresses that. The current agreement spells out that jointly used capital projects get split based on flow base. It's already in there.
Okay.
It's on what? Flow base. Flow base.
Hans, Hans, may I? So if in the future, you have a major reconstruction or improvements or things like that, would that be all put into the flow-based?
This only addresses major capital projects, not any maintenance projects, not any minor capital projects, but let's just say a clarifier has to be rebuilt.
Right.
County flow is 2/3 and the Lewes Board of Public Works is 1/3. That capital project today, if it happened at your facility, would be split based on the agreement. Because there's a definition in Councilor. It's called jointly used facilities. The current agreement, we already pay. If you were to upgrade, if you were to repair a major capital project today, per the agreement, we would participate.
And I think the bigger point is that we would have to come to a mutual agreement that clearly define any cost sharing, how the plant was operated, and other things down the line. And that has not been worked out yet because we haven't chosen an option. So a lot of comments about the time horizon that we chose, 2050, and that many people felt it was too short term. While 2050 may sound like it's close, based upon the current science that we have and the current forecasting, projecting anything out past that really decreases the reliability of those numbers. And 2050 gives us 20+ years, and any plant, whether it's option 1, 2, or 3, would be ready for or available for upgrades to adjust for that. The key is that any plant would need to be in a place that was well outside of the floodplains at that point. But the actual design of the plant, expansion and so on, would be taken into account. There were comments about what the city's role would be in the decision process. And this is clearly a BPW decision. We are not planning on cutting the city out. However, input, discussions with the city are, and especially because the property is jointly titled, are welcome and was something that we would consider down the line. This is going to be a BPW decision. There were comments about flooding due to or flooding coming from either houses with low-lying toilets and showers or infiltration into our collection system. On the collection system side, we have a mitigation team put together. We have several representatives here with us today, led by Presley, and that is already being, the collection system side is already being addressed in that. And, you know, do we need to put in shut-off valves? Do we need to shut off flow from sections that were going to be flooded during that event? How to harden the system to reduce the infiltration into it. With respect to the flooding from the housing side, that's outside of our purview. That's in the city building codes. And so showers and toilets and that is something that we have discussed with the city and will pursue further with the city, but it's outside of BPW's jurisdiction. Two more, and then we'll open it up. Option 3, there were a lot of questions about what oversight BPW would have of what got discharged into the canal. In option 3, the NRPDS permits would be transferred to the county, and the county would be answerable to the state and EPA for staying within those. BPW would continue to have, be involved in, review, and provide comments back. But the permit would be held by the county through the state and the federal government. And there's no way around that because the operator of the facility has to be the one who is accountable to the regulators. And then just lastly, there were several comments about the independence of GHD, especially in light of the fact that the county paid for 50% of the engineering study and we did. I just wanted to reassure everyone, having come from the nuclear power industry, consulting engineers are treated in a hands-off respect. GHD did this study on their own. They presented that we provided input, both the county and BPW, as to the territory, the inputs, those type of items. We reviewed to make sure that what they had done took those into account. We assisted in the soft factor identification, but the GHD report is freestanding, and I think they did an excellent job on presenting the information. So with that, I'd like to open it up to the board for any additional comments and questions.
I was just thinking as a in addition to the question I just asked about the major repairs. Hans, what happens if there's like the issue with the flooding of our sewers and the contamination with seawater and that getting into the plant? That'd be coming from our collection system and into the plant, and if that caused problems, whose expense would that be? Or on the other hand, if they say there was a an oil tank, a tanker truck that has an accident and gets into your sewers and comes into the plant, how would we handle that? I mean, would the generator of the contamination be responsible? Would we share it? How would that be addressed?
I mean, Press, the second one is easier than the first one.
Okay.
So the second one has a known source. And yes, the source would be, in the end, be held responsible financially for the contamination. The second one is, the first one's more difficult, but the county is very familiar with chloride contamination because of the long neck facilities we run. If you go down to Oak Orchard, that's every bit as low as Lewes Beach, if not lower. So we have experience, and low-lying areas are not the friend of spray irrigation, because you can reach sodium levels, and you know that from your own designs, that are not conducive to plant growth.
Right.
So what we've had in the past, we had to hold the flows and dilute them before we could spray out again. So again, as I said in the previous workshop, the previous public workshop, is flexibility is the spray facility's best friend. If you have the ability to spray and the ability to discharge, a high chloride solution discharge, whether that's through Rehoboth into the ocean or through South Coastal into the ocean or into the canal, high chlorides are not a problem to discharge. They are a problem to spray irrigation. So again, just like we hold water in inland bays to dilute, if we had a discharge facility, we would certainly try to discharge the high chloride waters and not spray them on the land.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, option 3 gives us more flexibility that way than option 1 does, because you have major holding lagoons. We do not.
That's correct. Right now, Wolf Neck has a relatively high lying collection area, so it does not have the same problems with chlorides as Inland Bay does. So strangely enough, sometimes we take this to our advantage. If there's a heavy chloride inflow into inland bays, we send more flow down to inland bays to dilute it out, for no other reason than that. Because you may not know, but we can move 100% of the flow from Wolf Neck to inland bays.
Talking about the options we have, we have certain control over option 1. We can harden. It's shown that it possibly could be hardened, and the options, third options, we have some pretty detailed information from you and from our consultants. The 3 option 2s, which depend on identifying, securing, and getting approval for another treatment facility somewhere in the relative vicinity of Lewes, is very difficult. When this study was done, our consultants, of course, identified open property that's in the area. Of course, they didn't identify it because they hadn't talked to the property owners, but they just looked at properties that could possibly suit us. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot available, but they could piece it together if, on paper. I think that option, no matter how much we wanted it, is the most difficult of all the 3 options that we have. So I really think that is almost impossible to implement, even if we thought it was the best option. I think it would be a very good option if we had the land around us that we had that was here open 20 years ago. I think even considering that is going to be a very difficult thing to try to implement if we thought it was the way to go. So I've kind of honing in on 1 and 3 as the two most likely at this point.
Richard?
Okay, well, I'll start. Just tacking on to what Brett said, basically, we have very few things to decide. Number one is the plant stays where it is, and I think we decided that that's not possible for the long term because sea level rise and I'm more worried about storm surge. I'm more worried about storm surge than sea level rise right now. But with sea level rise, we've got not so much a problem with the plant itself because unless it really goes up. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but and Austin, but the lowest part of the plant building above sea level is somewhere around 8 feet. The problem is, and I've seen it demonstrated with DENREC actually put on a symposium, I guess, or whatever, and showed what would happen with sea level rise if it went to 4 feet. And what we have is 2 feet of water between Bay Avenue and the city. So the point then is the plant's doing fine, but we can't get there. And so sea level rise by that standard, then we've got a problem with the plant. So the plant has had the problem where it is, so we really got to consider moving it. So then the question then is, what do you do? Do you move it? And if you move it, then you've got a serious land issue. Where are you going to put it? And you've got two problems there. You've got land, buying it, putting it, and then you have outfall. Where is the outfall going to go? And how much is it going to send? The other thing is an unbelievable amount of cost. So with those options, that's the real problem there. The county option, I think there's been a lot of comment about the county and you know, if we go with the county, they're going to be able to increase the number of buildings around and so forth and so on. I think regardless of whether we go with them or not, in other words, they're going to do something with the plant. They're going to be, you know, because of the growth and everything else, they're going to have to either build a new plant or enlarge one or whatever. And so they came to us and said, well, if we do this, would you be interested in tagging on to us? And so if we go with them or don't go with them, they're going to do something. And relative to the question of greater hazards going into the canal, if we were able to even get the permit to be able to do it, if they moved to the county and we'd have to, you know, get direction from DENREC and get approval for a permit. But the permit says what it says about discharge. And if you violate your permit, then the state can come in and shut you down. So they are really monitoring on what's going on in terms of going into the canal. So basically, those are what we're struggling with. And the land question by itself is where you're going to build a plant. And that you can probably do that without too much trouble and too much cost. But then what do you do with the outfall from the plant? And how do you get it to where it's going to go? Now you can pipe it, the cost of all that, and whether we can even get the easements to get the pipe all the way from who knows where out past Route 1 to any kind of outfall into the canal or into the bay would be unbelievable. I'm not sure we could even get them. And then if you talk about spraying, then you've got to really get serious amount of land to be able to do that. So those are what's driving all those costs if you move the plant outside of the city of Lewes. So those are my comments, basically.
So the press had said that option 1 and 3 were. Where do you come down?
Well, I've been going up on one side and down the other. My biggest concern is the land. And then the outcome. And I just don't see without a lot more cost than what the report says. I think we're gonna, and the more we wait, I agree with Chris, the more we wait, the more expensive it's gonna be. I have a big concern about whether we can even get permits to get piped from the, anywhere we put the plant to either the canal or to the bay. And because it's gonna have to go through an awful lot of somebody's property. And the other question, of course, and I was thinking about this too, is if you wait and wait a little bit longer and maybe technology will come along, which will take care of everything. Yes, and so you can get smaller plant and use less energy to run it, et cetera, et cetera. But you're still gonna have to deal with the land and the outfall. And I think the costs are going to be enormous. So I'm really going to have to say, I'm leaning very hard towards the county.
Richard?
I'm looking at this more simplistically in that I believe the BPW should not be in the treatments business. The county is well positioned, well experienced to run a treatment system with options of moving volumes of sewage within their system with their personnel that are locally sourced, and that the BPW maintain the pump stations and the collection system that will feed wherever the new plant turns out to be, or the reconstructed plant, if it's Wolf Point or whatever. And from that perspective, hardening, redoing one makes no sense. We should put any money of resiliency into upgrading our pump stations, which is already underway and being identified, thought about, and see how we can work with the county, what makes the most sense of creating a new or renovated treatment system, so that in any event, our collection has the ability to be treated somewhere outside of Lewes property and be reliable.
Yeah, I think one of the points, just to pick up on what you said, Richard, the BPW would still be in control of the wastewater collection and treatment and interface to the Lewes BPW ratepayers. We are not giving that up. So we are responsible for the collection systems, the pump stations, the sewer piping inside the city or inside of our territory, the billing systems, the rates and such. So this is very similar to the circumstance that happened 10 years, 15 years ago, when we shut down the power plant and we went onto the wholesale market. So we buy all of our electricity through DMAC, who buys it on the open market. And BPW is the electric utility that everyone interfaces with. This is just the inverse of that, where rather than us buying electricity from DMAC, we're buying treatment services in option 3 from the county. So, you know, from our ratepayers' perspective, it will still be a Lewes BPW bill. You will come to Lewes BPW with any concerns or comments or problems. And we are the sewer utility. So I just want to reinforce that point.
Yeah, and going forward, you know, if we decide to go with the county, I think one of the most important things we've got to do is have an airtight agreement that we both totally understand and protects us every which way we can as far as unexpected expenses to our ratepayers. And I think that's one of the key things we've got to do if we go with the county. That's we got to work on. I mean, we're talking a good match, and I like what Hans is saying, and I trust him, and I think putting it down in a really tight contract is critical. Hopefully, that will help assuage a lot of the concerns of the people that have spoken to us or sent us their own ideas. I know it's mine too. I'm concerned about the county, not Hans, not Todd, just the administration in general about their growth approach. So I think we can't change that, the growth approach of the administration. But we can put together a good package here that serves our ratepayers with a reasonable. It's probably the cheapest way we could go. We were of any that I can conceive of, and the ones that we looked at. So I think that's the way I'm leading. I think the next step is to make sure we understand what the agreement is all about, how it works, and what the costs are going to be going forward. But I think that's a key thing now that we're leaning that way.
And before Hans says, you know, just we've already started pulling other agreements from other municipalities to use as a bedrock for it. And so, Hans, you want to?
Right, in that vein, the county has several agreements with other partners. And I think I shared all of them. Alston has all of these. They're very recent, you know, they're within the last 5 years. So they're fairly up to date. They're very fair. I think all of our partners are very happy. We are very happy with them. We're still happy with Rehoboth. There's no quarrels with Rehoboth. I think what we are not seeing, and maybe the public is not seeing, is there is another major player out there, which sort of we get blamed for in the sense of land use, sewer. I'm a utility guy. I provide utility services once land use decisions are made. I don't question how they come about, but if the sewer needs to be provided. Now, I encourage everybody to go on the county website and click on the CPCN tab, and you will see how much private utility is in the greater Lewes area. Neither the board nor the county are the major utility provider. It's artesian wastewater resources. And they're building a massive plant on Route 30. So regardless of what we discuss here, they will be the probably predominant sewer provider in the greater Lewes area in the future.
One more point from me. I just thought of it because of what Richard said, and that was getting out of the sewer business. One of the problems we have is running the plant, because we have looked at it and said, okay, well, so what if we have all the employees and we run the plant? Well, it requires certifications that you can't imagine. everybody has to be certified for this thing, that, and everything else. And we looked at what it would cost for us to hire people and run it. And then we contracted out. The reason that we're having trouble just finding people that want to even take the job to contract it out is because it's so small. And it has problems and it's small. So the amount of money they can make from it, I'm assuming, and I'm just guessing, if otherwise we'd have a flood of people bidding on taking over the plant every other minute. And we don't. So regardless of what we did with the plant, it would still be small and we'd still have that problem. And I'm thinking that down the road, we'd have that problem even more because the people that would run it can find more money easier elsewhere with bigger operations. So I think we still have a major problem finding people to even run the plant for us.
Andrew?
Just so you know, Earl's one as well.
You want to have Earl go first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that.
Have Earl go then on.
Oh, he's on my phone.
You
Okay,
don't, yeah,
Can you guys hear me okay?
I can,
so
we can.
Look, I apologize. I've been in the Bahamas and they don't allow you to access this system here. So I don't know if it's because of cryptocurrency or whatever it is, but I apologize. In listening to a lot of the comments, and I thought the comments from our customers, I thought there were some really, really good points that they brought out. I don't believe that we should have a rush to judgment on this. I think we need to have a time frame that we can, work within whatever answer we need to have. But I think that we need to be more broader in our approach. I've never been to the wastewater treatment plant in the county ever. I can't opine on it. I don't know what skills they've had over the last 20 years. I don't know about injury reports they've had with their employees. I don't know what their reports look like of what comes out of the plant potentially. I know we've seen some things that have been projected, but to me, we have an opportunity here to be broad in how we bring people into this process. I think there are community leaders that would be incredibly helpful to tour the plant. I think city council members would be helpful in touring the plant as well. I think we need to have a broad constituent. Now, I agree with Tom. This is our vote. I believe that. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't take the time that we have and be thoughtful in this overall process. I do worry about the control that we would have with the county. It would be nice if there was a board and we could have a person or two on that board to be able to apply it and get information and get reports. I believe there's a lot of things that we need to go through to figure out what the right answer is. And we need to, I think, have a multi-pronged approach so we can figure them out in a timely, thoughtful process. There's a lot of great arms and legs in Lewes of smart people. And I think what I worry about the most is a rush to judgment. I think we have time and talent that we need to bring together to work through this process. That's my thought. And again, maybe this was said and I can't hear a lot, honestly.
So, Earl, do you have, recognizing we're not going to rush to judgment, we do need to do this in a timely manner. Do you have a hierarchy of the options?
The answer is yeah, I do. But I do based on what I know. I don't have it based on what I need to know, is my opinion. If you put a gun to my head, I'll give you an answer. And I know what that answer would be, but I think there's ways to make sure that that's the right answer. And going through the due diligence, the time, the negotiation, and bringing people together in that conversation it's just something that I personally, and it's the vote of the board. I personally think we need to have a broad coalition of people involved in this process.
I agree with that. The question is that, do we look at all three of the options? Or do we prioritize one of them or two of them and have this in-depth look? Because if we go after all three of them, we're going to be spending a lot of money.
I'm not looking to spend, you know me, I'm pretty frugal on this. But I think we can have a multi-pronged approach and understand what reports can we get from the county. You know, what ability can we have to understand not only what's going on and coming out of the plant, but what the future, you know, thoughts are in the plant and the technology and what they use. So I think it is possible. If you look at the hardening of the plant, that's a backup plan, right? That's a backup plan that says we can't figure it out or we need to figure it out in the future. We know what that is. I think we've got a pretty good idea, but then I know there's the idea of visual pollution that I thought was an interesting comment from the notes. But I think we can narrow it down. 3A and 3B. Well, if I had to twist the note, both might do 3B, but I don't know if it's possible from a regulatory, you know, perspective as far as the ability to get the wetland permit. So I think we can narrow it down, but I think we need to make sure we know how quickly we really do need to make this decision. And then you can decide on what the plan and approach is to make sure it's as broad as possible and as effective as it needs to be from a timing perspective as well.
Okay.
You make a really good point. And besides, I mean, this is probably the biggest decision that I've made since I've been on the board for several years. Besides having people being able to tour the existing facilities, what other things were you thinking about, Earl? I mean, we have had two very open and transparent workshops. We've gotten I think, an excellent report. We've received, you know, the response we've gotten from the community, I think, has been, you know, very thoughtful, thought through. It's not overwhelming. There's a certain core, like in most things, of people that have gotten involved. But I think so far it's been very professional. Haven't seen any cheap shots or anything. I think the community that's interested in this, or mostly, is taking it serious, is providing good information. I think the report's very thorough. I agree that's open the, maybe we should get the community to tour the county plan if the county's willing to do that. I'm sure they are. What else were you thinking? Is there more? I don't want to rush to judgment either. I want to make the right decision.
Andrew?
Yeah, just a couple of things. And one of the things that you addressed there was the question of whether the city will be involved in the decision, and you know, it's vetted by the BPW. These options do involve money, so the money will need to be in alignment, as Tom mentioned. So the communication will be important, the buy-in from the community to that piece. And I had a question on that for you, Hans. Then Tom and others have mentioned the importance of getting the agreement right. So how does that work on your side? Do you craft the agreement and your council? I mean, in these past agreements, how has that worked with your county council?
I mean, for example, let's use the Rehoboth as an example. When I started almost 8 years ago, the Rehoboth wastewater agreement had expired. So it was a joint effort between the public works side from Rehoboth, Mayor Cooper, myself, and Todd, who came up with the draft of the agreement, which was then reviewed by City Council and by County Council. Some adjustments was made. And I think within, I was going to say within 9 months of my tenure, we had a new agreement with Rehoboth, both on the water supply side as well as the sewer side. That agreement's been amended a couple times. The original agreement the county has with Lewes Board of Public Works dates to 2016. That went before both boards, I think with very few amendments, was approved very early on in 2016. Since then, I want to say 4 amendments. So the city of Seaford one is pretty extensive. It's a 3.5 million gallon facility. So that one, I think went back and forth twice. So these are not slam dunks. No, there are definitely there are issues which need to be worked out, just like Press said, and it's 100% understood. And I mean, we have good starting points. We have an existing one. We have good starting points, but I've made a career out of.
And is your impression that the existing county council is fairly well, are fairly knowledgeable about the options that are just you're discussing with BPW?
We had a very good presentation when the county council voted about spending the 50% participation on what they were getting themselves into and why they wanted to have what they wanted to have. But I think, deliberate, the process should by any means be deliberate. I do not have the undying desire to write the first draft.
And the last question I have for you, Hans, is that you have other examples of permitting that you have, like either in a river or a canal, that the county was successful and is successfully maintaining that?
We have a very good track record. I mean, there's probably, when you look through we have currently 2 permit applications pending. Actually, we have 3 permit applications pending. We have a large permit renewal and expansion pending, which went to public hearing at Inland Bays. We submitted one as required for the renewal of the Wolf Neck facility. That is pending. And then we have one for the Pine Neck facility. We have a permit and a renewal and a construction permit for South Coastal. So if we were to take and the South Coastal project and the Rehoboth project was a joint project between the city and the county. We bid that together. The city requested that. Press, I don't know whether you know that. That was a joint $70 million project. And we are wrapping it up this year. As a matter of fact, the Rehoboth component is finished. So I was certainly in charge of the project from first day of design to the last day in Rehoboth. So if anybody wants to tour a brand new facility, which would be similar to what we're looking at, is the Rehoboth facility. Well, if you wanted to see one of the end stages of the construction, it would be the South Coastal facility. I'm more than welcome to have anybody visit Wolf Neck, but you're really looking at a mid-1990s lagoon-based treatment system, which never been upgraded. So we have the application before the NRC is a full-blown upgrade to the Wolf Neck facility, but it's an upgrade which speaks to an upgrade in irrigated in a spray irrigation facility, because the county also has leased land on Wolf Neck Road in front of the treatment plant from the state. That's part of that upgrade. So, like that's sitting out there waiting for the permit. And once that permit is issued, the county would proceed. But obviously, this is a much more comprehensive, much more regional solution. And I do believe in regional utility. I do not believe in duplication. And the county has a very successful agreement with Artesian Wastewater Resources, which is strictly reciprocal, which allows us to exchange flow and not duplicate infrastructure. I mean, I'm looking at this the same thing. If you were to build a facility under option 2, I would probably go to my grave cringing, because that's duplication of infrastructure.
And sorry, I did say one last one. I got one more. Land that has been spray irrigated. What are those? How can that be redeveloped as into housing. So if we were to partner with you and you abandon spray irrigation and then we go with the outfall, then can that acreage then be turned into housing?
The short answer is there is no deed protection for the lands which are used as wastewater spray application. Now, in the very short answer for Wolf Neck, the county only owns a part of the site, the state owns the spray land. So we have a 50-year lease, like 45 years left. And so there is a protection, obviously, even if you changed Wolf Neck around 100%, it's state land. Now, I normally don't make any statements for any politicians, but I don't think there would be any hesitation on county council to restrict any of the lands they own in inland bays, because there was never any other intent other than to use it for wastewater application.
Thanks for that. I won't
Yeah,
do
I
that.
just want to emphasize, in case anyone couldn't hear, because that was one of the comments that came up several times, was the county land is under a 50-year lease from the state for spray irrigation, but there's 45 years left in that. So it's not like that land is going to be abandoned and converted into housing down there in the foreseeable.
Now, we actually have an approved agreement with the state. It's a lease and reforestation agreement.
Right.
And the public has repeatedly been asking us, why haven't you done that? The short answer is because the NRC hasn't given us the permit for it yet.
Okay. Anything else?
I am a politician, so I'm not gonna tell you which way I'm leaning yet.
Austin?
No, go ahead. This is your discussion.
All right, then I guess, going forward, the next step is for us, BPW, to digest the public comments, which we've already started, the discussion tonight. And we have our next board meeting in 2 weeks. What's the date?
22nd.
22nd of February. Oh, no, this is just a board discussion. We will, at the next board meeting, take this up. But going forward for right now, we're going to digest the comments that the public provided, our discussion tonight. We will, at the next board meeting, set a public meeting where we'll come back to the public with what the next steps ahead are.
Mr. Chairman, maybe, and the next steps ahead.
Yes.
Under the 3A, 3B, the county committed, the report reflects significant studies for the canal and for the soils and the glade. So we have reached out to DNRC, started discussions. That is a more than 1 year process and well over $1 million. So that has to be factored in before anything can be permitted under, even applied for permitting under 3. These studies have to be completed.
Thank you. And at the board meeting, we'll make a determination of what engineering studies we want to, besides that, authorize going forward relative to option 1, 2, or 3. Because in all of the options, what was done now was a 30,000-foot level review of those options, but whether any of the sites are suitable from an engineering perspective, or the complications would need to be further investigated. But we don't want to, as I said earlier, go and authorize an engineering study that's going to go into that level of degree on option 1, 2A, B, and C, 3A and B, because that would just be a waste of ratepayers' money. So, you know, at the board meeting, we'll, I think, make that decision. And I think, Mike, anything you can think of? You missed it? Any other comments from the board? Okay, the motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye,
Press and Earl, thank you much.
thank you. Sorry we
Go back
weren't
to
there.
Whatever it is you're doing.
For the beach row,
Yeah.
obviously.